My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to the premiere episode of the Music Crypt. And again, I am Jason J. Rock Houston, and my co-host is Dan Montgomery. Some of you may know from the Graveyard Shift. So let's get right into it, Dan. Let's tell the people what we have in mind here.
Well, I think it's going to be a freaking awesome deal. Actually, we're going to be talking basically. We're going to be talking about music and horror movies. I think that's what we're going to be planning on.
Yeah, and kind of whatever else kind of comes up in the conversation. But just to let people know the history, I have a little bit of. Me and Dan first made contact because I contacted him after seeing his Facebook page for his radio show, The Graveyard Shift, and I contacted him about doing an interview for my online magazine called Chaotic Riffs, and it was for our new On the Record segment, which is where we talk to people about some of their favorite bands and their favorite albums. And the one Dan chose to talk about was Rock and Roll Over by Kiss, because he's telling me that's the very first album I ever got. So he says, let's talk about that one. So for anybody that hasn't heard the interview, it's posted up at the Chaotic Riffs site, and I'll be sure to post that link so you guys can check it out if you haven't had a chance to yet. But for people who didn't get a chance to hear about Dan, why don't you tell them a little more about why Rock and Roll Over by Kiss meant so much to you?
Well, I was like in 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah.
And I had ordered. Actually, there was this cool record shop that was downtown, and we went in there. My mom took me in there, and I was going to buy a record. And I had this one particular song in mind that was playing on the radio all the time. Of course, being a young kid, you're pretty impressionable to what you're hearing. And I thought it was cool. And I think it was like Wild Cherry or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, and so I'm looking for the album, and the guy behind the counter is asking me about the album, and he says, I got it, but I don't think you're going to like it. And he actually opens the album and puts it on the turntable, and I'm just like, yeah, you're right. He goes, here's one you'll like. And he just handed me Rock and Roll Over. I took it home, and I was sitting there staring at the cover. It's like, all right, well, I rip it open, and that was the end right there.
That's such an iconic looking album cover. I mean, it's so iconic that when they did Kiss Unplugged in 1995, that was what the stage looked like, that they were performing on.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And now, when you first got into Kiss, I was curious how much of a look, when you got that album cover and you look at the band's picture on the cover, how much did that look have to do with you becoming a Kiss fan?
A lot, because I was like into comic books, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there looking at the cover, looking at these guys like they're freaking like comic book heroes or something like that, because they don't have any idea what they even look like.
Yeah.
And I think even in the merchandise that was in the album, I don't think there was actually any posters or anything like that of them.
Yeah. Not at that point. And people forget, back in 1976, this predates the internet, and probably like me, Dan, back then, you remember you'd get those little cards like said, join the Kiss Army fan club.
Yeah, absolutely.
And talking about the experience of going to a record store, that's something I really miss. I'm talking to you from Long Beach, California, which is near Los Angeles, and you think that's the heart of a music capital, okay? But do you know? I mean, outside of going to maybe Target and finding the Beach Boys or the Beatles' greatest hits or something like that, I got to get all my music these days, like a lot of people, on Amazon or through the band's websites that I listen to. But people, I think, don't realize how much of a major experience that used to be, just going to a record store. How much fun it used to be,
Yeah, because you could just walk in and just not even go in there in mind for an album.
Yeah, I mean, I remember.
I'm just gonna go look around.
Yeah.
And walk out with like 5 albums just because of the covers.
Yeah, I used to, when I had on days when I had nothing to do, my favorite place to go, I don't know if you remember, Tower Records, and the reason I love that so much is they just had such a huge selection. I mean, you could be into they had world music, Latin music, rock music, rap music. They had everything under the sun. and they even used to have an import section. So, like you said, I used to love to go in there, and it'd tell you what all the upcoming new releases were when they were coming out, and I kind of, between paychecks, kind of plan what's my next album is going to be that I'm going to get, and stuff like that. I could just spend hours and hours, and talking about being into comic books and horror. I mean, Kiss is a perfect band to get into because, like you said, they look like cartoon characters, they look like comic book characters, and then of course, a few years later, they put out that great Marvel Kiss comic book, and the big thing with that was that they actually drew blood from each of the band members, and they put the blood in the red ink in the comic book, which is kind of a unique thing. I mean, who would think to do that? But that was Kiss, that's who those guys were. And did you get the comic book and all that when it came out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I had like 3 copies of it because one of them I chopped up and used all the pictures and pasted all over my wall.
Yeah. And Dan, also while we're on the subject of Kiss, got to ask because Halloween's coming up, and I remember when I was a kid, like every Halloween they would play since 1978 they play the movie Kiss Meets the Phantom. I mean, we look back at that and we can kind of laugh and say how campy it was, but at the time when you're a little kid, that's the cool thing to have, your favorite rock band in a movie. What was your initial thoughts when you saw that for the very first time?
I think the first time I saw it, because I was just a huge fan, I just sat there in front of the TV with my mouth hanging open, just couldn't believe what I was seeing.
And it's funny because even Paul Stanley said, you look at the man, he says, it's kind of campy, and I don't really dig it, but it's cool for what it was, even all these years later. And I kind of was interested in learning all the interesting little facts, like, for example, Peter Criss, if you and when you're a kid, you're not really paying attention to stuff like this because a lot of times, even back in the day, you didn't hear these guys talk too much. Usually it would be like Gene and Paul doing all the interviews, but I know if you listen back now, you can tell the voice, the talking voice of Peter Criss it's not Peter Criss's voice. They had some other guy, I think it was a black guy actually, come in and do Peter's voice. And if you listen back, you go, okay. I wasn't aware of that at the time. And Ace, I think, even had a black like stage double, and it was kind of all these little tidbits about the movie years later would come out. But that's the kind of stuff I kind of dig. Yeah. And another band I seen you recently kind of post on the Graveyard Shift. You were talking the other night about White Zombie, which they kind of I put them right up there with Kiss in the sense they kind of had that shock rock thing going for them. And the interesting thing is, as great of a band as White Zombie was, I think a lot of people have forgotten about that band because since the band split up, of course Rob Zombie's had a huge solo career, but I think a lot of people have forgotten about White Zombie, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's kind of what I like doing. On the Graveyard Shift is dig out some stuff that maybe you haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah, and I gotta tell people, when you did that initial interview with me talking about Rock and Roll Over, one thing that really came immediately clear to me in talking to you, Dan, was first of all, you got a great radio voice. You've been doing this for a while, I guess, and you seem to really have that great radio voice, and you seem to like a lot of the same bands and music I do, and I dig that because a lot of the bands that I grew up on weren't necessarily the most popular, but they meant something to me, and I could tell that you're the type of guy that like you said, you're not going to maybe feature an album or an artist on your show unless you really if it's something you really are into,
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of when I'm putting the show together, right? I'll be going, what would I want to hear next?
Yeah, see, I kind of,
and it may not be a logical choice. Like last night, I played the Blues Brothers as my main featured album, right?
Yeah, see, I dig that because I seen that today and getting ready to talk to you today. Oh, okay. He talked about the Blues Brothers, and that's kind of cool because while it's not typical hard rock or even horror theme that people know you for talking about, it kind of has to do with pop culture, and pop culture is a very I think that's in doing this Music Crypt show. That's something else we can kind of get into in between because the Blues Brothers, especially back in the '70s, was a very big thing, and I think a lot of people have even forgotten about the legendary Blues Brothers. So I got to thank you for reminding people of that.
Yeah, and it was like the
Wow.
And it was a show they did in L.A.
Yeah.
As they were warming up for Steve Martin.
Wow. And see, comedy back then.
Yet that turned into such an epic album.
Yeah, and comedy back then.
For turning it, from a Saturday Night Live skit to that.
Yeah, and
I found it amazing.
That was cool because comedy back then was really in its raw form, and it was really something special. I mean, that's when stand-up comedy and all that was really first getting a lot of notice. And I'll tell you, as great as Saturday Night Live is, I think it was much better back in the day. I mean, I don't like it too much of political satire. I mean, I can get into that, but when all you do is rag on the president and that's all you've got, I mean, give me a new joke. I mean, even Stephen Colbert, I mean, when he first took over for David Letterman, he wasn't as popular as he is now. And okay, I give you credit. You start ragging on Donald Trump, and your ratings go up. But here's my thing. So if Donald Trump, he's either going to get 4 more years or he's not. But even if he just gets 4 more years, or even he doesn't get reelected, what are you going to do now, Stephen? I mean, get a new joke, and that's the thing. My complaint is when comedy to me is supposed to bring people kind of together instead of trying to divide people and stuff. I think even sports. You see how sports are getting. Everybody's got a right to their opinion. Don't get me wrong, but like when a sports team tries to tell people what to think, and back in the day, sports and comedy, you used to be able to go see a stand-up comic act, and if you're feeling down or something, they're supposed to help you, forget your problems. I think people are getting away from that these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's you're gonna put on like a tinfoil hat, but I think it's all part of their plan, dude. I think it's divide and conquer.
Yeah, it really
they're
is.
going to break up everybody into little groups. That way, they're easier to take over.
Yeah, and I don't really care what side aisle anybody falls on politically. I mean, I got my view, and you got your view, or whatever the case may be. I still think, okay, we don't have to agree, but we can have a discussion.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I kind of hate how people are like, oh, he's a bad person, he's a bad guy. He's trying to divide everybody. Oh well, what about you? You're saying bad things about him. Well, he did it first, Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's like I don't know. I'm just kind of tired of it. It's just. And then no matter what happens, no matter how the voting and all the crap goes down in November, it's still going to be a freaking circus for another years while they fight the results.
And then I laugh because, again, I don't care what side of the aisle somebody falls on politically, but both sides are kind of guilty of the same thing in the sense that they accuse Donald Trump. Okay, well, if he loses, he's not going to play fair. We're going to have to haul him out with the police or the state police, and then Hillary Clinton gets on TV the other day. Hey, Joe, if the president's reelected, don't you concede? I'm like, wow, this is getting out of hand.
Yeah. It's just like they're. I don't know. I don't know. It's gonna be a huge cluster screw up, and I don't know. I guess the only thing we can do is to grab a bag of popcorn and sit around and watch the show.
Yeah, and since this is our premiere episode, another thing I wanted to kind of discuss with you, Dan, because you seem like you've got a real lock on doing your radio thing, and you got a great radio voice and everything. I'll tell you, when I first started doing these interviews, I think I've gotten better over years, because I remember, you and I were discussing, hey, when we do is kind of let it rip and let's get to kind of know each other, which that seems to work better for me, because I tell you, when I first started doing these interviews, I really didn't have any experience. Something I just started kind of doing for fun. But I remember when I first started doing them, I would do it more scripted, and okay, I'm going to be all prepared. I would write out my questions that I was going to ask. And I'll tell you the funny thing is, as prepared as you think that might make you, it comes off coming up sounding exactly that, scripted, because you're not talking as freely like we're doing. Like there'd be like, oh okay, well, question 1, question 2. You sound almost like a robot, and then I come to realize, hey man, just be yourself. Act like you're talking to an old friend. And
exactly.
And over the years, I got better. But I was curious when you first started doing this. What was your experience with that? Did you ever have trouble, like even when you're first, recording these shows and having trouble, like hearing your voice?
I had all sorts of tech problems when I first started. It was like a
There you go.
I didn't have any external equipment at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was just using like the laptop microphone.
Yeah.
It was pretty horrible, but I didn't really start trying to do interviews until I found out about Skype, right? And I was well, maybe I could use that for doing an interview. And so I think I got a local band around Seattle to hook up with me, and we just kind of did a little just an interview.
Yeah.
But there was some tech problems with recording it because it would only record half of the conversation.
Yeah. I mean,
that's not really useful.
You watch that stuff on TV and it looks really professional, but have you had any experience with like Zoom? Because that's the new thing. I was kind of Skype was something I was kind of wanted get into, but I never have really taken the time to learn about. But like Zoom, I have a little bit of experience with that, and I don't know, but what's your experience with like Zoom versus Skype?
I haven't even tried it.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And I stopped using Skype because I was just having nothing but problems.
Yeah, okay.
And so the only reason I was using Skype is so that I could call people in Germany for free, right?
Yeah.
But I found another program. I guess I could just say it. It's just called a free conference call.
Oh wow, okay.
And it gives you a page of numbers for any country that you need to be talking to.
Oh, interesting. Wow, see, that's another thing.
So you could have Switzerland, Germany, a guy from Florida,
wow.
And everybody, as long as they're on the same time frame, they all call in the number, and they all talk together.
That's an interesting concept, and but the technology, like you mentioned, it's just amazing what it's like from time I started doing this, like in 2007 until now. I mean, when I start too, I start like in a little, in my little bedroom, and I had a little like mini miniature micro tape recorder, if you remember those back in the day. And now I got like a digital recorder that I'm doing this on today, and then when I'm done, I'm going to download it into the computer, and I mean just that alone makes it so much easier to get the stuff out there to people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. It was like when I started the show, there wasn't a whole lot of internet shows. You know what I mean? Sure, there was some out there, but they just weren't really plentiful. And
I remember.
And I got tired of being turned down by FM stations that wouldn't play our music.
Yeah. I
kind of fell out of the band scene, but a couple of years after that, I started doing this because I basically got told by an FM DJ that didn't have what it took to be a DJ.
Well, he's wrong there, because you got your own thing going, and let me ask you about that. Like, how long did it take you, would you say, to get a pretty nice little fan base going there? Following, as far as people would regularly follow you.
Dude, it took years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you go by like Facebook like numbers or whatever the hell you judge your fan base by or whatever, it probably, I don't know, it probably took 2 years just to get over 100.
Yeah, I'll give you a funny story. Like, I typically interview like metal and hard rock bands, but every once in a while I'll get an act somebody wants me to interview that's a little far out. Like, for example, Candlebox. Okay, they're signed to Pavement Entertainment, and they're a great little label. They got kind of a little bit of everything on there as far as different types of music, and the publicist that always is sending me bands to interview, she asked me, would you mind interviewing the singer from Candlebox, because they have a new album coming out. And I thought, okay, well, Candlebox is really my thing, but okay, I'll at least talk to the guy. I'll give it a shot. And here's the funny thing. Now, like I said, typically I interview hard rock and metal artists, and Candlebox are more of like an alternative, but metal and hard rock fans are kind of all so into alternative. So I thought, okay, well, we'll give it a shot. And that was one of the more popular interviews. I mean, typically the interviews I get anywhere from like maybe 16 views to to maybe as much as 100, 120 or so. And this one it went right away to 4K. I'm like, wow, wow, how did I get that? And when we were trying to launch the site, the person that owns the site was telling me, which they're more of a business person, but I dig it because the guy that owns the site, he's really cool about letting me kind of just, every once in a while he'll send me a band to interview, but kind of I get to pick and choose who I want to interview in that, and kind of have my voice, if you will. And so that's been the cool thing about it. But it's funny because even I've interviewed like established bands, and like let's say the Dead Daisies. I interviewed Doug Aldridge and John Corabi. Those got pretty good views, but nowhere near like what the Candlebox interview got. It was just kind of funny. Like, okay, how come they're into this one interview but not this one?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really, I don't know. That was kind of the reason, one of the reasons why I want two stations now, basically. Monday I just do like this underground show where I just do unsigned bands, right?
Yeah.
And then the rest of the week I do this full album thing, and sometimes I'll mix in some underground with some of the mainstream stuff, but it just didn't seem like that the underground guys cared.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I've interviewed this. I'm not going to mention the name, but I've interviewed this guy about his band. Going all the way back to when MySpace was the biggest thing in the internet. But and he's got a pretty loyal following, and this last, and I'll be honest with you, we're not high tech or anything. I do it for my house and stuff, and I posted the interview. Most of it came out pretty good, but then there were some, and I don't have a lot of editing equipment, so I just kind of posted as it was, and there were some places where the audio wasn't up to snuff really, and the band's manager, he kind of just he said something about it, kind of on the site, he made in the comment section, and I felt like, well, it wasn't my intent to make it sound like that. I'm sorry, I kind of told what I just told you that doing this from home and this and that, and then he didn't like the way he took something I said the wrong way, and he didn't like me in his mind talking back to him. This was a manager of a band, and he was telling me, okay, you're never gonna get a chance to interview this guy again because of the way that interview came out, blah blah blah. And on one hand, you'd think that that I'd done this to Nikki Sixx or somebody in Motley Crue, but this guy, like I said, he's got a decent following, so I'm not gonna trash him too much. But then when I sent him a private email, I said, I've always kind of supported you, and I apologize. I even said, if you'd like to do new interviews with better sounding audio, I'm willing to do that. I said, I'm just kind of curious, why, you and me good or what? Why you let the manager kind of talk about it? He says, well, you got to understand, he's the one that gives me the money to make the record, so I got to kind of go along with what he said. But the funny thing, like I said, Dan, is I've been doing this since 2007. I've only had like maybe in that whole time doing interviews, I've only had three main people, like three main complaints, if you know what I mean. So I think that's a pretty good record.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, and so I was curious, like you also mentioned to me that you were you had a band at one point, or that you were a musician. So talk a little bit about that.
Oh, so I think it must have started like way back in probably the later 70s.
Oh wow!
I got a guitar, and I started to try to learn guitar, and I got I played the guitar until I think I went through junior high school, and then when I hit high school, I was in band class the whole time, and so the teacher asked if anybody wanted to learn electric bass.
Wow. Yeah.
And I stuck my hand up, going, yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
And so I started playing bass, and I just kind of sold the guitar, and I never picked up a guitar since.
so let me ask, you mentioned Kiss obviously being an influence on you musically. How big of an influence was Gene Simmons as far as bass playing for you?
That was one of the reasons I got into it, he gives you that everything that you want. You know,
Yeah.
he gives you a little bit of shock. He gives you some horror, and they give you some good rock and roll.
Yeah, he was always my. I don't know why, but he was like always my favorite member of the band. I liked all the guys, but he was like my favorite member. And I think part of it was just the stupid, tongue thing and that. But I'd heard him talk years ago in an interview where he's talking about. He's like the whole tongue thing was just kind of came up accidentally. He said, we were doing a photo shoot really early on, and I was making all these funny faces, trying to do all these things to get the photographer to take notice of me. And then he said, like, Paul got kind of upset, like, hey, man, what were you doing there trying to, hog the spotlight? And he's like, well, he said, Paul, I was just trying to get the photographer to take notice of me. And that's how that became such a big thing, yeah. And it's kind of, now, did you ever, I know kids that used to dress up, like, for Halloween, like, different Kiss members. Did you ever do that?
Oh, yeah, I did Gene Simmons 1 year.
Yeah,
and then I did Ace Frehley another year.
Yeah. Now I got to ask you because another album that I'm really excited is coming out is Ace Frehley's Origins too, which is like it's an all covers album, but he's known kind of for doing that, and he usually does a pretty decent job covering other people's material. But are you at all looking forward to hearing that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a cool album, I think.
Because they just put out a like a little teaser video for. He does a cover of the Beatles' "I'm Down," and I tell you, it's awesome. And
Nice.
Years ago, when Aerosmith was first coming back in 1987, they did a cover of it on "Permanent Vacation," so that's pretty cool.
Right on. Yeah, I played a couple of nights ago. I played his version of "Magic Carpet Ride," which is just
that's off the first Origins, and I tell you, I love that. That's one of my favorite tracks off the original Origins album.
Yeah, it's a freaking awesome album.
Yeah, so that's something maybe we'll have to talk to you about on a future show. But I got also comment you, Dan, because a lot of the stuff you come up with is classic stuff. As far as these albums that you feature, I was really I took notice of the Stooges. You covered that I guess a few nights ago, and what a cool artist to cover because they're one of those bands from back in the day that. Either people know who they were or they don't. They don't get a lot of love, but I'll tell you, what I dig about, that is totally a rock and roll band in the sense that Iggy Pop back in the day was known for cutting himself on stage. And he just get a knife and cut it. And first you see this, you're like, what the hell is this guy crazy? What's he doing? And I imagine parents back in the day were like, oh, this is crazy. But that sure got people's attention. And again, talk about the Stooges in the album you were featuring the other night.
Oh yeah, so I played their first album, their debut album, the Stooges. It's got "I Want to Be Your Dog" and "No Fun."
Yeah.
Just some really cool 1969 kind of. It's a cool album because it's kind of like a crossroads. It's like it's what I consider a crossroads between like the '60s psychedelic.
Yeah.
And punk rock.
Yeah, that's almost like they're
it's just like they were the band.
The first true American
the sound.
To me, they're like the first true American punks. Because if you want to get into talking about punk, people like early on were labeling Motorhead punk, but I don't know if I totally agree with that. But of course, heard of the Sex Pistols, but I think the Stooges were the American punks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's cool that the Stooges are kind of finally getting some love because for years, Iggy left the Stooges and he was a solo artist and people know him from that. But I think at the end of the day, the Stooges might have more of a fan base.
Yeah, they were just a cool band, and
yeah.
So original. And kind of edgy, but having fun at the same time. I don't know, just a cool band.
Yeah, and talking too about a couple other bands that kind of got a horror connection. Where do you land as far as like Danzig or the Misfits? They kind of are tied together, but
those are some of my favorites. I love the Misfits. I love Danzig. I haven't been able to actually catch any of their shows, but holy crap, I'm a huge Danzig fan.
Of course, the Misfits predates Danzig, but I remember when he came out with that video and it was all over MTV. Mother. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
He really made a statement with that, and I'll tell you.
He's got that other band too, Sam Hain.
Oh yeah. And I don't know if you had a chance, but speaking of Glenn Danzig, it's kind of an interesting thing. But he recently put out an all Elvis covers album, and it's pretty cool. It's a little different. If you're expecting it to sound like Danzig, it really doesn't. But I guess apparently, and if you look at the way the guy looks, he's always kind of been influenced by Elvis apparently, and I just say he does it the Danzig way. He puts his stamp on these songs, but it's interesting for what it is.
Yeah. I did so I do like seasonal shows, so like I'll have October, it's going to be all like horror stories every night, until Halloween. And then Christmas time, I did a Christmas show, right?
Yeah.
And I tried to play like the hardest, heaviest metal Christmas songs I can find,
Yeah.
And there's one that I found that I can't remember the station that he was on.
Yeah.
It was Danzig. He was on some punk station, and he recited the night before Christmas.
How cool is that? Now, typically, like when you're telling these Halloween stories on the show, are these like classic Halloween stories, or do you kind of make up your own stories, or what do you typically do?
I went back to this place called Old Time Radio.
Oh wow! Okay.
And they've got stuff from way back, like say the original War of the Worlds. They've got stuff like Suspense.
Yeah.
Like Suspense was a radio show that was basically an old EC horror comic book. They got turned into a radio show.
Oh wow! How cool is that? That's cool.
And so they've got some really cool stories there. Lights Out is another really cool horror series that was way back in the day.
Wow.
Get Vincent Price and Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre.
Yeah.
Just some really cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean,
then I found some like longer running series stuff like there's like a 14 or 15 part Frankenstein story.
Oh wow, that's cool. Now,
and that's way back in the day too. And then I found a rebroadcast, basically, like the original War of the Worlds. All the aliens died because of germs, right?
Yeah.
But I found one that this place, they did like a rebroadcast of it. I want to say it was like in 1970 or 71.
Wow.
And so they kind of updated the music. They used the like real name DJs and stuff like that. Wow. And they were playing like Rod Stewart and Helen Reddy and Cher music, like that.
Yeah.
And they'd break in saying, they just got this report that there was an explosion on Mars, but they don't think anything's going to happen. And then everything, of course, goes wrong.
Yeah.
And in this story, everybody dies.
Wow. I got to ask you, even, they still got Fangora magazine and stuff like that, and they have these horror conventions you or tell me you've attended from time to time, but are you surprised that, because there is a huge underground as far as, like horror fans and stuff, are you surprised that they don't make more horror films and stuff like they did back in the day?
Yeah, I'd like to see them do stuff like, I'd like to see them get away from the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it seems like for a while, it was all cookie cutter, but, it was all like Japanese ghost stories.
Yeah. I mean, it started off
once you see The Ring, you've seen them all.
Yeah. I mean, even Halloween and how many of those are you going to do? As great as it may be.
Yeah. Like Halloween, Friday the 13th. What else?
Freddy.
What's his name? What's his name? Adam Green.
Yeah.
He did a series, horror series called Hatchet.
Yeah.
And those were kind of like a homage to all the bloody slasher movies that he grew up on. There's some really over the top kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, that's another thing I think you were telling me you do on your show from time to time, that you have like a slasher list or.
Oh yeah, I had a friend that would call in, and every Friday we would talk about a horror movie.
Yeah.
So like Offer would say, Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's on Netflix, so it's free. We can both watch it.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'd watch it, and then the next weekend we talk about it.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
what did you like about it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, this was really cool. You know, and then he just vanished. I don't know. Maybe he got taken over by a body snatcher.
And let me ask you, tell us the story of how you first got into like all these, you know, horror films and stuff. I mean, was it in association with the music you were into, or did it come after?
Horror actually came before the music.
Wow.
I was probably, gosh, 4th grade, maybe. You know, and I'm clicking through the channels on a Friday night, and I land on like this nightmare theater thing.
Wow.
And they're doing, you know, like a Lon Chaney Wolfman.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just sit there and watch it. And the next week they'd have The Mummy on, and then Dracula, and you know, The Invisible Man. All those like Universal classic monsters that were kind of scary, but they weren't like bloody scary.
Yeah, I mean, I got
they were like shadow scary.
I gotta ask you too, in regards to horror, like when I was a kid, one of my favorite things to watch on TV was Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Talk a little bit about that.
Elvira was cool.
Yeah.
I was a little. I think when I started seeing Elvira on TV, I was living down in Phoenix, so it was really cool. You know, watching some of the movies she'd bring out, and I liked how she'd come in and give her smart ass comments. You know.
I mean, and it was weird because, you know, Elvira was kind of sexy, if you know what I mean, in a horror kind of a way, and where it didn't really matter what she looked cool just the way she was, you know, and it's kind of sad Elvira kind of died out after a while, but you know, there was a point in time when she was really big all over TV and was she was doing the Not Scary.
I think she did like 1 or maybe 2 movies.
Yeah, and then, you know, she started doing the Knott's Scary Farm thing at Knott's Berry Farm for years. And then it got to a point where she stopped doing it because I guess she wanted more money or something. But she's kind of disappeared. I don't even know what she's doing, but I'd be kind of interested to see what she's
yeah, no doubt, huh?
Yeah. But that was an interesting thing they did, you know, horror-wise. Elvira, I think she really stood out on her own because she was... she's really the only woman I could think of that you could think of, you know, that would do the horror thing.
Yeah.
And you know, before we wrap this up today, Dan, I also wanted to discuss, because I think another cool thing about you that you shared with me is when you done the initial interview, because again, not knowing what you look like or anything too much, I went to your Facebook page and mistakenly I took there's only one photo up there of anybody, so I thought, okay, that's got to be him. And a lot of times people even will post, oh, you know, this is whoever it is. I thought, okay, well, it doesn't say nothing, so it must be him. And you're showing me, no, that's, first of all, you said, I think, well, first of all, tell us, who did you say that was?
That was Dale, the drummer from Uncle Sid.
Oh, okay.
And so we did a merchandise swap. He sent me an Uncle Sid shirt, and I sent him. I was gonna send him just one of my regular graveyard shirts, and he goes, "Do you have it in red?"
Wow.
And I'm like, "No, but I will." So I changed the design a little bit for him, and sent it from the printing press to Canada.
Wow.
And so he goes, "I'll put it on and wear it around, that way people can see it."
And then what I got a kick out of is you're showing me, oh, that wasn't me, but it's cool you used the photo, and then you're telling me, you said, the thing is with me, I'm not really known for posting photos. You said, I like to kind of have a mystique. And that goes back to the thing we were talking about with Kiss at the top of this episode today, where back when Kiss was first coming out, you know, in the 70s, I mean, they really had a mystique, because, I mean, this predated the internet. You know, you go on the internet and find photos from years ago now, but they were really protective about it, so much to the point they used to have a huge bodyguard if anybody was able to snap their picture.
Or if they didn't have their makeup on, they'd have bandanas or something over their face so you couldn't see.
And that was really a big thing, you know, back in the day. And I tell you from my own experience that like I said, I started doing these interviews back in 2007, and I started out doing, because at the time the big thing was email, and, you know, these people would list all their emails out. You'd contact them, and some of them would respond. And so a lot of the stuff I started doing was in writing, and then eventually moved on to a lot of people say, well, why don't I just give you my number and we can talk over the phone, this and that. And I'll admit, when I first started doing it, I was a little bit nervous because I had never done it before. And like, oh my God, what am I going to sound like? And then that's the other thing is you start thinking, because when you first start doing it, the thing in your mind is when you first listen back to your voice on tape, it sounds very different, even if it's really not. But in your head, it does, you know. And I think most people experience that. And so that's the thing is, for years I would just post like a little logo I had designed, and I put that on everything, and I never really thought about posting my picture. But then people, once Facebook came into the picture, people started, why don't we see a picture of what you look like? And it was never really an issue for me, but there was a time or two where somebody would comment on what they thought in regards to what they thought of my looks, which I didn't care. But the point being is, I kind of dig what you said, because I like to have a little mystique to what I do, and then you do have these crazies out on the internet, and I think it's a smart move on your part. So talk a little bit about your decision to have that mystique, or that desire not to kind of put all your information out there.
Well, at first it started because I didn't have any way of taking a picture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to come up with some kind of, I've come up with the graveyard shift.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now I've got to come up with this little picture that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
So I find this, I just called it the Screaming Zombie.
And that's the other thing I want to bring up before we wrap this up today. Is you're a great artist. I mean, I was seeing some of that stuff, and you told me, oh yeah, that's my art. But I thought, wow. See, even without a picture of you, Dan, you got all that great artwork, the graveyard shift. You've got your brand, you've got your name. That's really all you need,
Yeah, and so I used this zombie head for a while.
Yeah.
I switched over to I guess you'd call it like a classic, more of a classic, like smoking devil head.
Wow, yeah.
That you would see like on a bomber.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I wanted to put that image on a T-shirt.
Wow.
But then I found out I couldn't use that image because it wasn't mine.
Really? Oh, wow.
So I'd have to find who the artist was.
Oh, wow.
And get permission, buy rights or whatever before I could actually put that on something and say I want to sell it.
Now, how about like the graveyard shift?
So instead of doing that, I was playing some bands, and every time I would play a new band, right? I'd tag them on Facebook as I'm doing the line of the show, right?
Yeah.
And there was a band called Death Design.
Wow.
But I ended up tagging. No, it was Death by Design, and I ended up tagging Death Designs.
Wow.
Which was a tattoo shop down in Texas.
Wow.
And so we talked back and forth. His name is Tommy Lynn, and he ended up drawing the current Smoking Devil head.
Oh, wow.
I paid him, and he says, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Just don't change the image, because my autograph is in there.
Oh, okay.
Until this day, I still can't find his autograph.
So even that's that's interesting. Even that's an interesting tidbit about the graveyard shift that probably not too many people knew about before. But that I dig stuff like that, and so I just got to. So musically, when's the last time you played in a band of your own, or?
It's like 94.
And do you have any recordings that people could check out that have ever been released, or?
Nah, we were back in the cassette days,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And so we didn't have any CDs. We had, I think we had a few tapes of a couple of live shows that we had done.
Yeah.
And we were in the process. I think I told you about this. We were in the process of trying to write a what do you want to call it? It'd be like doing Tommy or Quadrophenia.
Concept album.
Or Operation Mindcrime.
Concept album.
It was going to be Frankenstein.
Oh wow. That's speaking of Frankenstein, I think I shared this with you recently. After I did the last interview with you, I interviewed this guy. Apparently, his band's been around for over 25 years, and they're kind of like a little punk band from New York. They're called the Electric Frankenstein. And I interviewed the guitar player, and they're kind of an interesting band because they're re-releasing some of their older stuff, but they got a cool little following, and they got a little horror theme to what they do, because obviously they're named Frankenstein. But he's saying Frankenstein in their case, if you look on the Facebook page, they got pictures of Frankenstein. That's what I thought initially too. But he says we're talking more like Frankenstein in the sense of my guitar is more of like a Frankenstein guitar. And he said, but the interesting thing is you can go on Amazon, and he says, believe it or not, our little band, I think they're from New York, of Electric Frankenstein. He's saying, we've been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not for our music, but because we put out this art book. So it's kind of an interesting thing. That, wow, I never even heard of that, but okay. He says, yeah, you can get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for all kinds of things. The only requirement is you just got to be around for 25 years. Yeah.
How funny.
And I noticed too that you've covered Black Sabbath a lot on the Graveyard Shift. I was curious, as far as Sabbath, do you have a favorite era? Like, do you favor Ozzy era versus the Dio era? Or?
I kind of dig the whole
thing. Yeah.
The whole thing. But I think my favorite time is when they were doing like Volume 4. Oh
wow, okay. Yeah.
They were still really experimenting, trying to get the sound that they were going to have basically for the rest of their career.
And Sabbath, they kind of created that. People say Steppenwolf, but I dare say Sabbath actually created metal because of the way Tony played, having his finger cut off, and boy, he played the guitar. But yeah, and it's kind of interesting because even back in the classic days, we're talking about Ozzy era now. They did have a bit of a horror sound to what they were doing, and and everything was black and the crosses. And I understand, like I heard Geezer Butler talking once about, people thought we were, when we wore the crosses, they didn't know what we were. They didn't know if we were Christian. They didn't know if a lot of people thought we were devil worshippers. We let people kind of just go with whatever they were thinking at the time. Yeah, and did you ever get into like the '80s Sabbath when Tony was the only original member and they had like Tony Martin fronting the band?
Oh yeah. Tony Martin is a freaking awesome vocalist.
Yeah, I hear he has a new album coming out, but I'll tell you, a solo album. But it's kind of sad because Tony Martin was like Tony Iommi's go-to guy when Ronnie James Dio was in and out of the band, and they kind of just forgot. They did stop playing all that music when he was no longer in the band. Kind of forgot about it. It's kind of sad,
Yeah. I think a lot of that's probably maybe
fans too.
Maybe even label decisions. Or who's in the band.
Yeah.
Or it's like they did. What was the album? Never Say Die.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But when they got ready to write it, Ozzy freaking left the band.
Yeah. And
so they hired, I wish I had his name right off the top of my head, but he was out of Savoy Brown, and I think he was in Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, wow.
They hired him to come in and be the vocalist. So they wrote this entire album, right?
Yeah.
And just as they were getting ready to go in and record, Ozzy comes back to the band.
Yeah.
And so they're like, sorry, dude.
Yeah.
And they kicked him out, but then Ozzy wouldn't record any of the other written material that wasn't his.
Oh, it makes sense.
So they had to rewrite some of the songs.
Yeah.
And there's one song on the album called Swingin' the Chain that he doesn't sing.
Wow.
And it's the only freaking Sabbath song in the Ozzy era that Ozzy doesn't sing.
Oh, wow.
And they had Bill Ward sing it.
Oh, amazing. I wasn't even aware of that. That's a cool little fact. And another interesting thing about Sabbath is, they had Ian Gillan come in at one point.
Again.
And after he left, I'd actually have heard Ron Keel talking about that they tried to get him into the band before they got Glenn Hughes. And they were working with a producer named Spencer Proffer. He was known for working with Quiet Riot. And they wanted to get Ron Keel into the band before he formed Keel, because this guy had the vision of making Sabbath into a hair band, if you could even imagine that.
Yeah.
And I guess Ron...
I got a cool story.
Yeah.
I did an interview with a band out of Arizona called St. Madness.
Oh, me too. Oh, yeah, very cool guy.
You know those guys,
yeah,
right?
Very cool guy. Yeah.
And did he tell you about the story at the Mason Jar?
Yeah, I think he did, but yeah, very cool guy.
Where the manager, Rob Halford's manager's in the crowd, and there's only like 14 or 15 people there on like a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And he was going to be trying out to be the Sabbath vocalist.
Oh wow, cool! But I'm glad you brought up, because Saint Madness. I got an interesting connection with them, and just simple fact of interviewing these bands, and the guy that owns the site said, "Hey, this band contacted me from Arizona," and the guy was really nice. He probably did the same. He sent me a copy of a CD, and I got to listen to it, and it was very interesting because the band's been around for several years, like since the early '90s, and I listened to a CD with fresh ears, and I like told the guy, Prophet was his name, and I said, where have you guys been hiding all these years? I mean, you're the best kept secret. Yeah,
exactly.
One of the best bands.
They're a killer band. They really are.
Yeah, so you actually interviewed him. Was this recently or a number of years?
I've had him on twice.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. I'm going to be interviewing him again.
Yeah, they're a great fun.
Yeah, I told him, man, where have you been keeping yourself? I tell you, Saint Madness, I put them right up there, if you can believe it or not, as far as people always saying rock is dead. I just think, we don't have a lot of rock stars like we used to, but they're still good bands. Probably besides Saint Madness, I'd say right now my most favorite band has got to be the Dead Daisies.
Yeah, they're cool.
And what's interesting about the Dead Daisies, I don't know if you know their story, but the rhythm guitar player, David Lowery, he's from Australia. He kind of is the one that's in charge. He owns the band. And part of the reason he has all these named guys coming in and out of the band is they're on this type of schedule where, this time of year we're going to go in and record an album, and we're going to release the album, in the spring. Then we're going to go on tour. That's what it's been pretty much. And so pretty much like Brian Tichy, the drummer, used to be in Whitesnake. He used to be the drummer in the Dead Daisies. And we got time to record on their last album. He's like, well, I got some studio time booked for one of my other bands. Well, dude, if you can't commit, then we'll just get somebody else to come in. And like John Corabi, he recently left the Dead Daisies last year, and along with Marco Mendoza. And who do they get to replace the two of them? The legendary Glenn Hughes.
Yeah.
And
that's what's really cool about that band. It's like a rotating door for talent.
It's kind of like a modern day Whitesnake, except in Whitesnake you have the same singer and alternating band members, which, as great of a singer as Glenn Hughes is, you think, okay, with having so many singers come in and out of the band, but it doesn't seem to affect the band. People just kind of love what they do.
Yeah.
And
that's a cool setup right there.
Yeah. And before David Lowery ever had the Dead Daisies, I guess he'd made his millions in business. But you gotta love a band doing what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some really cool like when you get into like the underground stuff. There's some really cool bands there. There's I'm still really partial to anything that's like horror related, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a band out of New York, a Demon Boy. You ever check them out?
No, I have to check them out, but
yeah, Demon Boy's cool. There's Murder Rock out of Vegas.
Wow. Oh wow.
Just some really cool stuff going on.
Yeah. The last name I'm going to drop names for today. I just the other day interviewed this guy from a band called Diamond Rex. They're from Chicago. Apparently they've been a metal band like since 1985.
Nice.
They recently got signed to Pavement, but like the lead singer I interviewed, his stage name is. They kind of got a theatrical look going to it, but like his stage name is Nasty Habit, and I mean, just you look at the photos and it's like they look like rock stars, and he's like, well, you come to one of our shows, we want to entertain you, and I'm like, that's what I like, theatrical stuff.
Right on.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed doing this today, Dan. It's kind of just this is our premiere episode where kind of get to know each other, but I could talk for hours, but I think let's save some more for next month. We're going to try to do this once a month, so this will be going up in the next week or so, and this will be for September, and then we'll meet again in October. And I would think I'll be emailing each other back and forth between this show and the next show, but being that October is Halloween, I guess we'll be talking a lot more about horror next time. So you put your
excellent idea.
So you put your ideas together, and I'll get my ideas together, and we'll email back and forth, and we'll come up with something for October. Thanks for doing this, Dan, and I'll let you know once it gets posted, and feel free to tell all your friends about the music Crypt. And we didn't get into that, but for October, I want to also bring up, you're the one that came up with that great title, so we'll talk about that next time. Thanks so much. Okay, bye-bye.